Juan Carlos had shared content on TikTok, where he mentioned the Sinaloa Cartel and the faction of the Chapitos, led by Ivan Archibaldo.
We arrive at the order for the disorder, and up with the boss, Joaquin El Chapo, bastards, pure people from Ivan Archibaldo to the Vega.
Naming one of the most powerful cartels in Mexico can be one of the last things you do in your life, and this is what happened to Juan Carlos, better known as El Chilango, a charismatic social media character who roamed the night streets of Sinaloa. The famous TikToker thought that naming one of the most powerful drug trafficking leaders would be a good idea. However, his enemies didn't think the same and gave him the worst of endings, showing that the violent days in that city or state continue and don't seem to have an end. But what happened to the guy from Mexico City? The events occurred approximately at 1945 hours on Saturday, October 19th of the year 2024, that is 7:45 in the evening, on Musala Island in Culiacan, Sinaloa. At that moment, the influencer, who was approximately about 30 years old, was selling candies from a stroller as was his custom. The street vendor approached the car windows to offer some candies. What he didn't know was that this would be his last night alive because there were miscreants watching his every move, waiting for the right moment to attack. Everything happened so quickly that the man from Mexico City couldn't realize what was about to happen to him, and it was in a matter of seconds when a group of armed civilians who were near where Juan Carlos was making his sales opened fire with high-caliber weapons from the motorcycle they were riding. The pedestrians and cars in the area fled in terror, fearing to be victims of a stray bullet, but the man from Mexico City was not so lucky. The impacts left him with wounds that caused him to stop breathing, and his candy cart was filled with a crimson red, marking the end of his life. Juan Carlos's body lay on the asphalt next to a median strip right in front of a bank branch and a gas station. The brave ones who approached the crime scene called the authorities immediately. However, when the preventive state police officers responded to the report, it was already too late. The authorities cordoned off the area and requested the support of the state attorney general's agents to take over the case. Who had taken the life of this street vendor? For the neighbors who saw him daily, it was hard to believe he had enemies.
Yesterday evening, a person who sold sweets in Culiacan, Sinaloa, and also created content for TikTok was murdered. One understands that he was somewhat famous or quite famous there in the city of Culiacan. His name was Juan Carlos. They called him El Chilango, and it seems that his life was taken because he was clearly advocating for the Sinaloa Cartel, the Chapitos faction, and it was very likely the rivals who took his life.
What initially seemed like a crime due to a possible armed robbery turned out to be a case more linked to drug trafficking. Investigators reviewed the victim's mobile phone and found multiple videos shared on social networks, including TikTok. It turned out that this candy seller, in addition to sharing a typical day or humorous content on his profile, also made reference to the Sinaloa Cartel, specifically to the faction of Los Chapitos, led by Ivan Archibaldo, after the arrest of Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, whom he also referred to in his recordings. But had the enemies of this group put an end to the man from Mexico City? Well, the authorities believe that was the most feasible theory. In fact, in some recordings, the man from Mexico City appeared accompanied by Marquitos toys, who journalist Anabel Hernandez pointed out as having links with the heirs of Guzman Loera, and who actually appeared in some bulletins or pamphlets that a certain criminal group threw from the air, along with the faces of other characters supposedly related to organized crime. But well, that's another story. He appeared with Marquitos toys, alleged to have connections with drug trafficking. Even on November 22nd of the year 2023, Marquitos Toys was trending on social networks after a video was shared of him crying over the arrest of Nestor Isidro Perez Salas, alias El Nini, who was the security chief of Los Chapitos.
Or what? Don't you guys have friends? One doesn't decide what a friend works in. Not even your own parents decide what profession you choose. Friendship is very independent. Anything doesn't affect me. I'm not ashamed to post something while crying. You already know where one live, where to find me, and if it's a crime that one of being his friend, then one will pay for it. It doesn't matter. He was a great friend of mine, and he still is.
In the stories, Marquitos Toys defended his friendship with the detainee, affirming that he was not ashamed to show himself crying and that his relationship with this person had nothing to do with the illicit activities he was associated with. It was impossible to believe that the YouTuber was not in some way linked to the illicit activities of his friend, but well, who are we to judge?
One read many comments that say, "One, bring fear."
That
I'm not afraid of anything. One always do things right. One always do things well. The unfair things are different, but they don't leave me. One don't do injustices, not because one have friends with power. One am overlooked.
The YouTuber defended his friendship with the Nini and declared that he didn't care about the crimes, as one was already telling you that he had committed to be arrested. For him, it was his friend who he missed.
In this property, elements of the National Guard captured this individual, who is presumed to be the Nini, when he tried to escape through the roof of the house.
But why was he crying in front of the cameras? Was he scared? Maybe he wanted to show and make it clear that he was really a friend of Nini and his allies. Or maybe Marquitos Toys was fearing for his life. Who knows? Damn, he's more drunk than hell.
We're but very drunk with my friend Marquitos Toys, but really drunk. Up, the people from above, people from El Chapo.
From Raton, from Ivan and Alfredo. The same day of the arrest of the lieutenant of the miners, as this group of Chapo's sons is also known, there was a second operation where Kevin Daniel N. was apprehended, also linked to the criminal group and who was speculated to be the cousin of the influencer, thus somewhat demonstrating that Marquitos was much more linked to the cartel than was believed.
According to the information, elements of the National Guard and the Army entered with artillery units into the residential complex located on Lola Beltran Boulevard and surrounded all exits and entrances in the Leon section, where in one of the buildings, federal agents executed a search warrant. In the searched residence, chemical substances were found, a firearm was secured, a van was seized, and Kevin Daniel N. was arrested. 31 years old.
But who is Marquitos Toys? Does he really have no connection to organized crime? In the exact words of Annabel Hernandez, she says the following: two other characters not so relevant, secondary, but undoubtedly relevant for their violence and for being hitman bosses is a subject named Marcos Eduardo alias Marquitos Toys and another subject named Mario Alberto Castro alias El Castor. These two drug traffickers from the wing of the Chapitos, one of the main very young fentanyl traffickers, they will provide a lot of money and weaponry for the Chapitos army. Marquitos in his war against the Zambaras. As one tell you, these are not my words, they are the words of the journalist Annabel Hernandez. All of this, by the way, he mentioned in a podcast called Narcosistema, and as you realize, it makes clear that the YouTuber was more than a friend of dangerous and powerful men.
Annabel Hernandez has claimed that Marquitos Toys and another drug trafficker, Mario Alberto Castro, alias El Castor, are relevant in the trafficking of fentanyl, increasing violence in the region.
Marquitos Toys, whose real name is Marcos Eduardo Castro Cardenas, is a popular influencer who has over 4 million followers, both on his YouTube channel and on his Instagram account. However, Marquitos is not just any influencer from Mexico. He is a man who has been linked to the Sinaloa cartel, specifically with the faction of Los Chapitos, led by the sons of Joaquin El Chapo Guzman. The influencer has also been questioned on multiple occasions for his ostentatious lifestyle that is incompatible with his role as a YouTuber, especially when compared to other famous people who have a similar style to his. In these videos, he shows off his various high-end vehicles, his millionaire houses, and excesses through his social networks, which has raised suspicions that his fortune may be illicit.
On this side are the brands that Juan was telling you are more premium, and Juan, I'm going to think, start sorry with these boots to see the prices. They are Dolce Gabbana boots that cost me. These cost approximately 22,000 pesos, and a pair of sneakers that are worth 800,000 pesos, the pair of sneakers.
In addition to these statements and Marquitos Toys' participation in narco corridos alluding to Perez Salas, a supposed official document was recently released identifying someone named Marcos Eduardo with the alias of Marquitos as the financial operator of Nini. In the same structure, Kevin Daniel Castro Beltran, cousin of Marquitos Toys, was included, arrested on November 23rd of the year 2022 for being another alleged collaborator in the management of resources of the criminal cell. At the same time, amidst the wave of violence due to this war unleashed in Sinaloa, various audios allegedly related to the La Chapiza brothers have been leaked. In one of these recordings, reference was made to the content creator Marquitos, who had allegedly been the victim of an attack.
The videos were captured in the Porta Alegre area, where several units and armed men were seen entering a private area. Through a radio frequency attributed to the Chapiza, they deny the eruption of the Malisa at the home and the kidnapping of Marquitos Toys. As cited in the audio, the Chapiza entered and busted the person in charge of the Malisa's weapons. They reiterated that the Chapos rule here, the Malisa receives no support, and they are losing the war in Culiacan.
Hours after this news came out, the influencer shared a post in which he assured that he was fine and that none of his residences had been affected. Everything that was circulating was false, was what he wrote. And to this alleged attack was also added a peculiar event that occurred in several municipalities of Sinaloa when several planes dropped in Culiacan, Los Mochis, and Mazatlan various leaflets where they exhibited the names and faces of several characters linked to the Chapitos, which one was telling you about earlier.
From the heights, leaflets were thrown onto the streets of Culiacan, allegedly from a plane or manually, in which a message was written against the sons of Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, to whom they attribute floor charges and other abuses, in complicity with Governor Ruben Rocha Moya.
In the leaflets allegedly thrown by the Malisa, 19 names were seen, among them that of Marquitos Toys, who appeared under the alias of the Crybaby, possibly as a mockery of the video where he sheds tears for the Nini.
In the writing signed by the Malisa, it is requested to join efforts so that they can enter Culiacan to put order in the text. It is stated that they will not rest until they enter the city.
The pamphlets denounced this criminal group, who were held responsible for crimes such as charging fees to real estate businessmen, stealing vehicles from citizens, charging in risk channels, extorting cargo trucks, selling cigarettes and vapes, among others. So they asked citizens to report them by adding numbers of the armed forces. And although so far the government authorities have not officially confirmed the link of the criminal group with Marquitos Toys, the speculations of the role it would play for this faction have gained more strength following the war unleashed on the 9th of September of the year 2024 against the faction of La Mayiza, after the betrayal of Joaquin Guzman Lopez to Ismael Zambada Garcia, which led to the capture of the veteran capo in the United States on the 25th of July of the year 2024.
The images show that the American authorities were already waiting for the plane where the two drug trafficking leaders were being transported. In the video recorded from a distance, you can initially see some people and several trucks at what would be this private airport of Santa Teresa, El Mayo Zambada.
Guzman Lopez are surrounded by U.S. federal agents and immediately taken out of this place. There you have it. Even a violent video that circulated on social networks reinforces the theory of the YouTuber's relationship with the cartel. In the clip, you can see young people tied up and half naked, surrounded by a group of thugs who ask them to shout in the name of Marquitos Toys while they make them suffer. And who's on top? Who's on top is what the alleged member of a criminal cell asks one of the victims while holding his ear with one hand and a knife with the other. In response to the question, the boy spits out blood and an unrecognizable object that apparently his captors would have forcibly inserted. When he finally has the chance to articulate words, he answers the thug's question and asks again, And the victim says, "Up, Marquitos Toys," obviously, because in that situation he is in, whatever they say, he will obviously repeat. That is not a guarantee either, but well, let's go crazy is what the possible criminal says before cutting off his left ear, and after finishing the action, he repeats the question referring to the famous YouTuber from Culiacan and cuts off the young man's right ear. As the boy is filled with a maroon color, the man holding the knife says, "What else?" as if looking for a way to continue the suffering. "I'm also going to take him to hell," is what you hear another one of the subjects located around say. The recording cuts off after a minute and a half, so it is unknown what additional aggressions may have been committed against both young men. But then the question is Marquitos Toys so powerful? Although in the audiovisual material there are no indications about the criminal group that would be behind these acts, some unofficial versions indicate that they would have been the responsibility of the Sinaloa Cartel, specifically the faction that was commanded by Nestor Isidro Perez alias El Nini, with whom Marquitos Toys acknowledged having a friendship.
Who's the crazy one from above? Who's from above? Ah, you're eating, sorry dude, and what? Well, tell me, who's from above? Marcos, what? Let's go then.
Several sons of the now imprisoned former leader of the Sinaloa Cartel, Joaquin Guzman Loera, alias El Chapo, have created their own cartel called Los Chapitos and have become a more influential criminal group in Mexico. Joaquín Guzmán López, Ovidio Guzmán López, Iván Archibaldo Guzmán Salazar, and Jesús Alfredo Guzmán Salazar, collectively known as Los Chapitos, have gained increasing influence in the trafficking of synthetic substances in the north and west of Mexico.
The war for the Sinaloa cartel between La Mayesa and Los Chapitos could take an unexpected turn. This Tuesday, a version has circulated that points out that Los Chapitos, one of the factions that are in the dispute for the cartel's crown, that faction commanded by Ivan Archibaldo Guzman, could have closed an alliance with the Jalisco New Generation Cartel.
The main business of Los Chapitos, just as it was for their father, is international drug trafficking. The sons are involved in the trafficking of large quantities of all kinds of substances, from white gold, the little herb of happiness, to certain more complex substances to the United States, using a wide network of contacts throughout the region. In particular, the group has adapted to the changes in the substance markets and has become increasingly involved in the trade of synthetic substances, especially in regards to the trafficking of the powerful synthetic opioid called fentanyl. In fact, the Chapitos have expanded their activities to include the exploitation of drug user rehabilitation centers to recruit new traffickers, another cause of the ongoing violence between them and the Mayo faction.
The United States announced that it will undertake a legal battle, a true hunt against the sons of Joaquin El Chapo Guzman and other members of the Chapitos group and the Sinaloa cartel. They accuse them of being pioneers in manufacturing, trafficking, and distributing fentanyl in the United States. In addition, they offered million-dollar rewards for their capture and even listed their accomplices.
The Ninis are identified by the United States government as the armed wing responsible for the security of the Chapitos, which was led by Mario Alexander N., alias El Pigi, apprehended in Culiacan, Sinaloa.
Authorities managed to detain El Pigi, one of the closest operators to the sons of Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, and this was possible after an air and ground operation in the Santa Fe sector north of Culiacan.
After the gunman of the Sinaloa cartel faction was detained, the security of the Chapitos is in doubt, especially after the circulation of various audios on social networks in which a possible betrayal by PIGI is established to join the Mayiza, sons of Ismael El Mayo Zambada, and with whom they maintain an armed conflict after the detention of their father on July 25th of the year 2024. So since September 9th of this year, violent days have been registered in Culiacan, in Sinaloa, after both factions started a war following the detention of the leader of the Sinaloa cartel in the United States, as the Chapitos are accused of having betrayed the capo to facilitate his arrest.
Yesterday we were talking about the horror that is experienced in Sinaloa, and the truth is that we have been talking about this for several days, several weeks. In Mazatlan and Culiacan, the National Defense Secretary has returned the weapons to the police after almost 2 months in this escalation of violence, an unbridled violence that does not even allow the population to go to work, to study.
12 days of intense conflicts that have caused the loss of more than 50 people, and after the capture of the security chief of the leader of one of the factions in dispute, the gunman who could be in charge of protecting the Chapitos would be the second of the Ninis, that is the 27 or Peri. Being the second in command of this armed branch, Jorge Humberto Figueroa Benitez, alias the 27, would be the next in charge of the security of the Chapitos in the face of the confrontations they maintain in Culiacan. On the other hand, the Drug Enforcement Administration for its acronym in English, offers a reward of up to $1 million to anyone who provides information that allows the location of 27, who is wanted for fentanyl importation, substance trafficking, possession of weapons, money laundering, among other crimes.
27 or Perez is Jorge Humberto Figueroa Benitez, and he is the security chief of the Chapitos. He is in charge of ensuring that their stay in Culiacan is as tense as possible, from several armed branches that were left loose once Nini was arrested. What do we know about him? Really very little, because he is a figure that is just emerging, let's say, with significant relevance, and who is beginning to be investigated by the Attorney General's office.
Due to the discreet profile he has maintained over the years, there are some discrepancies about his identification data, as the records of the Mexican government specify that he was born in September of the year 89, but some Drug Enforcement Administration files place him in 91. During his involvement with the Ninis and being a high-ranking character within that armed branch, the 28 was in charge of supervising the personal security of the Nini, that is, Nestor Isidro Perez, who served as one of the security chiefs of Los Chapitos until his arrest in November of the year 2023. In addition, the 27 was in charge of coordinating the manufacturing and trafficking activities of Los Chapitos, this according to information from the State Department. However, the future of Los Chapitos remains uncertain, and it is unclear if the terror they have brought to Culiacan and its surrounding areas will come to an end. What we do know is that if it's not Los Chapitos, others will take control and things will remain the same as always. 21st century Mexico is characterized by a disconcerting increase in drug-related violence. While between 97 and the mid-2000s there was a constant and regular decrease in the homicide rate, this experienced a great increase from 2008 to 2011 and then a slight decrease in 2012 and 2013.
Our production team, our international team, has prepared this map that we want to share with you to explain what is happening in Mexico. That is Mexico country. We are going to be reviewing it together with you. And one asks you, please pay attention to the colors. In green is the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, the light blue is the Sinaloa Cartel, the yellow is the local group, and the 3 states that are in gray are states where there is no action from drug traffickers.
Since 1992, the homicide rate had steadily and regularly decreased, going from 22 annual murders per 100,000 inhabitants to 8, but between 2008 and 2011, it tripled to reach the figure of 24 homicides per 100,000 inhabitants. This increase in violence has also been accompanied in many cases, or almost all, by phenomena of cruelty that have barely receded from 2011 to today. The resurgence of violence is undoubtedly linked to the increase in power and activities of criminal groups dedicated to trafficking substances and other illicit activities, ranging from extortion and kidnapping to smuggling and the counterfeiting industry, including human trafficking. The violence is also due to the war on drug trafficking and organized crime declared by Felipe Calderon at the beginning of his term in 2006. Indeed, the climate of terror and impunity that reigns in the country has paved the way for a trivialization of everyday violence that has multiplied. And finally, it should also be noted that police and military violence and abuse of power have grown in alarming proportions.
Unfortunately, it is unmanageable. President Felipe Calderon, when he led the war against drugs, left something like 300,000 dead. And the drug traffickers are still operating.
The crucial issue we face today is whether Mexico will have the capacity and determination to effectively combat corruption, organized crime, and impunity. This challenge not only tests the strength of institutions, but also the commitment of citizens in the pursuit of a more just and transparent future. The answer to this question will be fundamental for the development and well-being of the country in the coming years. And it also depends on us to write a story of change and hope that we all deserve to live.
A greeting to all the crowd that is following me in the videos there with the antenna.
Just so you know, he saved my life.
He's a great friend. He didn't let me die. He didn't let me die on the line. And here we are at your service. We're still alive.
Remember that if you like interviews on Pepe Mysteries channel, you can find them every Monday at 2 in the afternoon Mexico City time with different characters such as ex-convicts, people who have been through accidents like, for example, the case of the pastor whose daughter fell into a boiling oven, and those types of cases on Mondays on Pepe Mysteries channel.